Well, staying in the United States, Joe Biden is still facing a political headache days after an FBI search of his home turned up yet more classified documents. Biden voluntarily allows the search to happen, during which items were recovered dating back to his time in the Senate and the vice presidency. That ordeal has taken up a lot of political air in Washington over the last week, with some senior Democrats saying Biden should be, quote, embarrassed by the saga. Well, joining me now to discuss this further is Dr. Thomas Gift, a political scientist with the University College London's Centre for US Politics. He joins me now from New Haven, Connecticut. Dr. Gift, thank you so much for being with us. Since the first disclosure, just over 10 days ago, this story has seemingly ballooned. It started as a, quote, small number at his former office. Now, multiple sets of documents have been found in his residence. How big a political storm could this be for the president?
Well, I think that it already is a real mess for this administration, and the slow drip of revelations certainly haven't helped. If they had come out all at once, that would have been one thing, but it just seems like it's more and more and more and more. And a big part of the problem is the White House's public relations response. At best, I think you can describe it as inadequate. Some critics even say that it's been dismissive. Biden himself hasn't done himself any favors with the comments he's made to date. For example, in a press conference, he appeared to discount the seriousness of the charges by saying that some of the classified files were locked in his garage next to his Corvette. You can imagine how that would have gone down had Trump said it. So there's the substance of the case, and then there's how the administration is trying to frame the allegations, and both, in my view, have been problematic.
We know that an investigation has been opened into the handling. What kind of jeopardy could Biden be in here?
It's a great question. Of course, we've seen a special counsel appointed in the Biden case, very similar to what we saw in the Trump case. And so these cases are essentially running parallel to one another. It's important to note that these special counsels are independent and they're supposed to be apolitical. But I think it's impossible to think about the Biden case without also considering the Trump case, because they're happening in parallel, and neither one, I think, can be viewed in a vacuum, simply because it's so politically charged. My sense is that probably both Biden and Trump now are unlikely to face any sort of indictment. So the investigation is one thing and the politics are one thing, but an indictment, I think, seems pretty unlikely, precisely because I think it would be very hard for the Justice Department to prosecute one case but not the other without being accused of having kind of two tiers of justice or playing favorites. And so for that reason, I think it's probably going to end in kind of a deadlock where neither faces real serious legal trouble. But the political fallout is real.
I want to keep pulling out that Trump thread. Obviously, parallels have been drawn between Trump's handling of classified materials and Biden's. Democrats saying this is different. Biden is cooperating with authorities. Nevertheless, is this a political point score if you're a Republican?
Well, I think that it is. And it's the case that for months, the Biden administration was making all sorts of comments about how they couldn't believe that Trump could be this reckless. Joe Biden himself made comments to the effect of he couldn't fathom anyone being so irresponsible. And so at this point, now that Biden is facing the exact same charges, it's very difficult for Democrats to defend, because if they do, it's going to look hypocritical. And so essentially the best they can do is say, well, the infraction here isn't as serious as the one facing Donald Trump. And I think that that's probably right. With Donald Trump, there's not only the allegation of mishandling of documents, but also the allegation of potential obstruction of justice. He stonewalled FBI agents essentially for months in failing to give over these documents. So that is an important distinction. It's critical not to draw false equivalencies, but Republicans are going to be able to muddy the water here, and the fact that the parallels are so similar means that this is a real political winner for them.
And lastly, some of these documents were discovered and reported just before the midterms, but the public didn't find out about them until days ago. Republicans say it was suppressed. Biden says he has no regrets over the timeline that's taken place over the last few months. What do you make of that?
Well, it's a really good question, because Biden has essentially made the case from the outset that he's being so transparent. I think that it is a reasonable question to ask, why wasn't it made transparent before the election? Of course, the administration was perhaps under no legal obligation to do so, and the Justice Department itself was in the midst of its own review of the documents. And so there may be a legitimate reason for that, but just the optics of it don't look good. This is an administration that keeps saying that it's trying to do everything by the books, above board, in contrast to the previous White House. And the fact that they're at least facing some allegations that they may have suppressed this, I think could end up being a real problem for them as well.
Dr. Thomas Gift, thank you so much for joining us here on France 24.
Thank you.